Hi, Stu here from Ital Corsa Asia. I want to spend some time this week to talk about maintenance. So one of the things that happens with go-karts is they do require a decent amount of maintenance. That a lot of what happens in your experience on a weekend, for example, when you're racing or even when you're practicing, that experience is very much going to be defined by the set of maintenance that was done during the week. It was probably done on Tuesday morning while you weren't there. Now, what you will find with different teams is some teams do very little maintenance. What will happen is they basically store your kart. When you say, oh, I'm coming out at 9 a.m. on Saturday. Well, at about 8:50 on Saturday, they pull your kart out, fill it up with fuel, put a fresh battery in it, and there you go. You're all ready to go. What happens is you drive out onto the track and you realize you have no brakes, and then what happens is you'll spend the next 2 hours sitting on the side of the track or sitting on the sidelines while your kart is being fixed during what should be your track time. Now, track time is a big investment, so you really want to maximize that time. So you need to make sure the karts are in great condition. Be aware that these karts are true race karts. A lot of things do wear out, and they're designed to wear out. As racing things, they're not built to run for 20 years. They're built to run for, a race weekend, for a few weeks, for a few months, depending on which item you're looking at. And they're built light in order to make sure that these are race machines, they're light and they're competitive. And so you'll find things do wear out over time. Wheel bearings will wear out. You'll find other things though. A chain and sprocket is good for about 10 hours of track time. So if you think about that, if you do 10 sessions, if you do one session a week, that's 10 weeks. If you do 2 sessions a week, 5 weeks, and then you're probably going to need to put a new chain and a new sprocket on the kart. There are other things. So the engines last somewhere between 20 and 30 hours before they need a complete rebuild. That often people will do a top-end rebuild at around 15 to 20 hours, and they'll do a full rebuild of the engine at 30 hours. So you need to be prepared for that, because if the mechanic comes to you and says, look, your engine is getting to the point where it's approaching the time you need to get it rebuilt, then you need to be prepared to do it, because otherwise if you take the engine beyond that point, you'll start and wear out and break other things in the engine that are going to be much more costly to fix. Or you're going to have a failure in the middle of a race or a practice session, with your kid on the track, etc. So there's a whole series, there's a table of maintenance things, say chains and sprockets and spark plugs and engines and, a set of brake pads. When we go into race day, we'll often put a new set of brake pads on. A set of brake pads may last somewhere between a few weeks and a few months, depending on how hard your kids are driving. The great thing about kids when they start out is a set of tires lasts forever, and you're not using the full rev range of the engine most of the time, and so a lot of that maintenance gets stretched right out. As the kids become much, much faster and more competitive, you'll find that these engines are running at 16,000 RPM. They are screaming race engines, and therefore they do require maintenance. So the team should be able to share with you up front what that maintenance cycle is, but equally, if you bend a tie rod or if a bearing's going with these machines, you really need to be prepared to say, if it's worn out and the mechanic says it's finished, I need to replace it. Because otherwise you're going to end up, I've seen people try and sticky tape things together and eke out a few extra hours here or there, or take a set of tires that's worn out and say, oh, it's okay, send the kids out on them anyway, they'll be all right. It's safety first. You really need to make sure that if something's worn, if the mechanic says it's finished, then you need to just replace it. And you'll find that if you do that, you'll spend a few dollars up front with that, but the experience will be so much better. You'll have much more track time. There is nothing worse than leaving a kid on the side of the